Rudy, the Arizona Cardinals today acquired three-time Defensive Player of the Year J.J. Watt. How afraid are you of this Arizona defense, if at all, with the new edge rusher J.J. Watt?
Well, Raymond, that's an interesting question. And there's a two-part answer to it. Number one, my initial answer is no. I am not afraid of the Arizona defense because I do not play professional football and will never have to deal with them in any physical manner. But having said that, if you're asking if I'm afraid of J.J. Watt, the answer is yes. I believe that even if I had a half a mile head start on him, if he decided he wanted to chase me down and tackle me, he could. He could grab me and rip me limb from limb.
With relative ease, I would imagine.
This is a skinny arm.
This is the GoldCast.
Boom! Welcome to another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis the first, baby.
Boom! Oh man, Ray, big show today. Lots to talk about. First up, this one is kind of curious, very little intriguing, and possible ramifications, possible questions. We're going to explore this. The 49ers inquired about Teddy Bridgewater from the Carolina Panthers.
Teddy Bridgewater.
I'm sorry, Teddy Bridgewater, not Terry Bridgewater, Teddy Bridgewater. Let me ask you a question. And they said it's because they were looking for possible backups for Jimmy G. So let me ask you, would trading for Bridgewater make sense?
I don't know if it makes sense for our team. He's a completely different style quarterback than anyone we have right now. And I know he's still, young. He's still in his late 20s. He's 28 years old. But I feel like stylistically, I know that Kyle could probably get the best out of him. Although, well, let me backtrack. Compared to Mullins, who we know is out the door, they are looking to move him out because he had a very narrow margin for error to keep his position, and he completely wet the bed last season, and now he's going to be gone. C.J. Beathard is not very far behind him, but the fact that he outplayed him last season did not help him at all. If C.J. Beathard was worse, that would be something, but the fact that he wasn't doesn't bode well for him. So we know Mullins is out. Teddy Bridgewater would definitely be a step up from either of those two people. So he would be competent relative to them. I just don't know if he makes sense for our team and our scheme. But Kyle Shanahan is very adaptable. But how do you adapt from Teddy Bridgewater to a Jimmy G if one of them gets hurt or if Jimmy gets hurt? That's the part that kind of confuses me.
The other part I'm concerned with is that 60, it is, I'll tell you the exact number right now. It is $63 million contract, $33 million guaranteed. And I think he's on the books for somewhere between 17 and 21 this year. That's an expensive backup quarterback. Really expensive. That price doesn't sound too far off from the price that would be to have Deshaun Watson. But this leads me to my second question, Raymond, before we move on. The Panthers also openly already have said we're willing to trade 3 first-round picks and CMC for Deshaun Watson, right? Like that was a big splash that they made a week and a half or so ago. So with them making that declaration, and now the 49ers possibly going after Bridgewater, does this mean that the 49ers are out on a possible Deshaun Watson trade? Or do you think maybe they're just exploring all options?
I think it's probably more of the latter versus the former. But, just because there's no confirmation that they're the front runner, they've just been the most boisterous about it, and they're willing to pay up the price, which is a pretty big price too. They're willing to give up their best offensive player, the best dual threat running back in the NFL, plus 3 first round picks. The Niners can give up most of that without necessarily. Our best player to them would obviously be a Nick Bosa or a Fred Warner, one of those two. They just gave up, J.J. Watt, so they obviously need an edge rusher. Nick Bosa would fill that void. It's just a matter of if they're willing to do that, and in exchange for a Watson. I mean, we've talked about this already at length. It seems like it'd be worth it. The question is, do the Niners think it's worth it? So I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if they're only the front runners. If Houston is taking those calls more seriously than they have alluded to the press. According to the press, which has reported back to everyone else, they're saying no flat out. They want to work it out. But every time something comes out of them having a meeting of the minds with Watson, Watson says, "Screw you. I'm sitting out if you don't, unless a trade happens."
Yeah, I don't necessarily know if this is a waving of the white flag for the 49ers, and this necessarily means that now the 49ers are out on a possible attempt for a Deshaun Watson trade, but it is intriguing. And I do think it does lean a little credence that maybe this possibility is losing a little bit of steam in the 49ers front office, because now it looks like they're considering trying to pick up the quarterback that may be replaced by Deshaun Watson in Carolina. So this is intriguing. This kind of bears watching. We'll see. Obviously, they are looking to upgrade at the backup quarterback position. We'll see if that leans into them possibly upgrading at the starting quarterback position. But again, as we've said many times on the show, that we are still big supporters of Jimmy G, and we believe he's more than capable, when healthy, of taking this team back to the playoffs and possibly another Super Bowl, for sure. All right, Raymond, let's move on. The big news today are, I wouldn't even call them rivals, because rivals you have to be threatened by. But the Arizona Cardinals have signed J.J. Watt to a 2-year deal. And
Who's
J.J. Watt, that picture in the back of him wearing the shirt, he broke that on, I think it was on Twitter and Instagram first, and he was like, source, me. Source colon me. I was like, that's the most J.J. Watt thing ever. This is a very interesting pickup, and I want to ask you, do you think, because this did not move, this basically, it did not move the needle at all for the Arizona Cardinals to, they are still I think it's like 40-1 to win the Super Bowl. Didn't move that at all. Vegas did not care. It did up their odds to win the NFC West, but very little. They still have the worst odds to win the NFC West. So let me ask you, does the signing of J.J. Watt, does that make them a contender in the NFC West? Does this signing make this defense more legitimate?
I would say absolutely not, because even though I thought it'd be kind of cool if J.J. Watt came to us in exchange for a D Ford, because it'd be more of a lateral move. You'd exchange one, player who's in the twilight of his career but is less durable than he used to be, but highly effective when he's able to be on the field, as seldom as that is now. Although D Ford is younger than J.J. Watt and just happens to be plagued with injury, and serious injuries too. It's like his back and stuff like that, stuff that legitimately keeps him off the field. But anyways, I digress off of D Ford. I love his personality, can't stand his durability. As it goes for Arizona, you're not even gonna get half a season out of J.J. Watt. So that's why the needle didn't move for Vegas. That's why I'm not intimidated by them. They need a little bit more than just one pass rusher who's at the end of the ropes here. And J.J. Watt really doesn't fill that void very well for them, just because you're going to get a player that needs extra rest now because of his durability issues. You're going to need a player who, he's going to get double teamed like crazy. He's not unfamiliar with that. But at the same time, I just don't think that he adds, the depth and the prowess that you need in order to really be considered a legitimate, scary pass rushing defense. You've just got one player who's not a shell of himself, but he's certainly not, he's not even like 70% of that former self. It's more like 60, leaning on 50%, which is better than a lot of average players in the NFL. But for Arizona's needs, and especially the opponents they're going up against in their division, not good. if you're Russell Wilson, you're not happy about that considering all of the running around he has to do for sacking. But as it applies to the Niners, I really don't think they have much to be concerned about here.
So let's talk about this. Let's talk about J.J. Watt's overall production. I'm going to give you some numbers, okay? From 2011 to 2020, okay? He started from 2011 to 2015, 16 games started, all of them. His sack totals, 2011, 5. 2012, this is when it gets pretty crazy, 20.5. Then in 2013, 10.5. 2014, 20.5. 2015, 17.5. 2016, and this is when the injuries start to happen, he plays 3 games, only 1.5 sacks. Okay. 2017, he starts 5 games, 0 sacks. Then bounced back in 2018, 16 games, 16 sacks, averaging 1 sack a game. That's, classic J.J. Watt. Then we come down to 2019, I'm sorry. That was in 2017, he was injured. 2018, we have the 16 sacks. 2019, he starts 8 games, 4 sacks. 2020, 16 games, 5 sacks. The same production.
So even when he was healthy, he was just as productive, played double the amount of time he did in 2019, and was still, again, less than 50% effective.
Yeah, so, you're looking at the last time he had played 16 full games and had only 5 sacks was his rookie season. So, and that was in the season he just played. So again, in 5 years, from 2016 to 2020, he has only played 16 games twice, once in 2018 and once in 2020. And in 2018, highly productive, 16 sacks, 16 games. But then we have 5 sacks, 5 games. And, if you go from, he's only played 2 full seasons in 5 years. So How many games are you really getting out of J.J. Watt? That's the big question.
I think you get about half a season. That's my prediction. I think you're going to get half a season out of him. And that's because this is someone who's missed 32 games in those 5 years. That's a lot. So, and only, twice. And again, he played 16 games. He started 16 games. But again, this is a guy who, the tackles were there. The TFLs were double digits. The quarterback hits were the lowest of his career last season. So he's just really, I don't know how much of resurgence he's going to get just by changing locations and uniforms. I don't know. I think there's a little bit of a psychological bump he's going to get out of that. But Vegas sees the same numbers that we do, and it's not promising.
It isn't, and I don't think you are in such a stacked NFC, and as long as Cliff Kingsbury is your coach, I think the ceiling is pretty visible from that position. All right, Ray, let's go on. They did it. The Warriors did it, my friend. They won
finally 3
in a row. And then promptly lost the 4th game before we could get onto the GoldCast. But let's go through their wins, because this is deserving of some recognition, our Warriors. So their 3 wins, 3 in a row. Warriors-Knicks, they won 114-106. Warriors-Pacers, 111-107. And then Hornets-Warriors, 121-130. Then they went to L.A. and got their asses handed to them, 117-91. Draymond Green didn't play, so that obviously led, the injury that he had, obviously major effect, losing that defensive prowess. First of all, let's celebrate the fact that the Warriors got to 3 wins. Excellent. Way to go, Warriors. We get to our 3 wins. We wanted
finally
3 wins. This is putting together wins like this is important. And I still think, despite the thumping they got against LA, I still think this is a playoff contender, a team going to the playoffs. What do you think?
I think so. I mean, the teams they beat were teams that are similar to us in their division. These are all East Coast teams. The Hornets are 16-17. The Pacers are 15. I mean, albeit they're just they're a couple shades they're a couple shades below the Warriors' talent, in my opinion. Probably, I'd say a little bit more in terms of the Hornets and the Pacers. So, in other words, the Warriors should beat these subpar teams. The Hornets and the Pacers are subpar. They're kind of flirting with 500, but they can't even get there. The Warriors are always just above 500, but are still trying to break the gap and widen the gap. The Knicks are 18 and 17. I would put them in the same category as us, just maybe a smidge below in terms of talent, because the Knicks don't necessarily have a superstar like a Steph Curry, or we do, and so those are good quality wins. There's a couple there that are saying should happen, and then there's a quality win against a Knicks team that had beat us earlier this season. So it was nice to get that win back. And then the Lakers are just the Lakers. I think they're, I think that considering the last time these two played and the loss that they suffered as a result, I think the Lakers were definitely looking for some payback to kind of remind them like, hey, we're top of this division. You've got to come through us in order to get to the promised land, which is true. That is a fact. But the Warriors are still getting progressively better. Whether they'll be able to take a team like the Lakers in a 7-game series, I highly doubt it, but they've got enough to get there.
They have enough to get there, and I think that's all we can really ask from this current version of the Warriors. Next year is the reload, and we hopefully we make one or two big moves and we go for the throat. Raymond, the last story to come out of this game, though, was what Steph said after the game. And this is really interesting because the responses to this seem to back this up. So here's what he said. Steph said after the game, "We have to remember that even when we're playing well, teams want to beat us and beat us bad. They still have a lot of memories from the last 5 to 6 years." And then the next day, like Matt Barnes, I believe he was on The Jump on ESPN, was like, yeah, that's true. Like, these guys beat a lot of teams bad, and they were, I don't know how to say it. I mean, I'm paraphrasing him, but he felt that sometimes they were a little showboaty in their wins, and there was really nothing anyone could do about it because they were just that good. So any chance to kick the Warriors while they're down, teams are going to take. Do you think that's true?
I think so. The Warriors dominated the league for the past 5-6 seasons. I would say 5. The Kevin Durant seasons as well as the group before that. Even in the finals losses, this was still a team that was blowing out just about every opponent almost every night. It was fantastic basketball for us Warriors fans. And even though this season is pretty fun, every game is a bit more scrappy and competitive. Although the Warriors have had plenty of blowouts this season as well for lesser opponents, it's just everything's just a little bit tighter with the opponents that are going to be in the tournament later. Those are the games that seem to be a bit tighter now, whereas in the past, the Warriors were blowing out all of those opponents as well. Not so much now. But again, we're just down some talent right now. If we have that talent, they're missing. And, I know Stephen A says that if Klay Thompson was in the lineup, we would absolutely be making the finals this season. I think that's a very, very high probability, knowing what Klay brings to the table in terms of defense and offense. So the record certainly isn't 19 and 16 with Klay in the lineup. It's very much closer to, Utah Jazz or LA Lakers territory, where I say we're right in between those two teams, something along those lines. And so I think Matt Barnes is correct. And yeah, people don't forget that. Regardless of what player plays for what team now, people still remember getting their ass handed to him for 5 years straight.
I mean, even Kevin Durant, when he's with the Brooklyn Nets and he comes to town, he wants to kick the Warriors' ass too. And he was on those teams. So I agree. I do feel like teams do get up, having watched a lot of this season, obviously haven't been able to watch every single game, but having watched many of the games, teams get up for the Warriors. They do. You'll see them play a lackluster game the night before, but then the Warriors come into town and they bring their A game. It's not quite to the same level of every night's a playoff game like it was for the 5-year dynasty run, but it's only a couple notches down. People bring their A game, and you're right. It doesn't matter who, as long as Steph's in that jersey and Steph's leading that team, and he has led this team for that entire run, they're going to come at them. The day they stop caring is the day Steph stops wearing that jersey, and that's a fact. In fact, I think even Matt Barnes said that same thing. That is definitely a fact. But all right, folks, that is it for today. Here is the question. Should the 49ers go for Bridgewater? Is this a good move to have him as our backup? Let us know in the comments. Go to youtube.com/thegoldcast and let us know. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe because we want to hear from you. All right? And so concludes another edition of the GoldCast. We are the voice of the Bay. I'm your host, Rudy Solis III, and with me is my brother, my co-host,
Raymond Solis the first, baby.
Boom! We'll see you next time. Same GoldCast time, same GoldCast channel.